One of the things we love to talk about on the Move the Sticks podcast is leadership and team building, and one of our favorite guests to have that conversation is with us again today. Three-time national champion coach Urban Meyer joins the show. Coach, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, and really good to be with you guys again. I really enjoyed last time we were together.
Wow, it's a lot of fun to catch up with you. I know this is a different time we're living in right now. I want to get to the football thing in just a moment, but I'm just curious if you've been keeping up with this documentary on Michael Jordan. As someone with the reputation as competitive as you are, I'd love to get your feedback on what you've seen from Michael and what you've learned through this documentary.
Well, my whole family is mesmerized by it, and I think it gets better each week. I actually just spoke to a college football team and got another one coming up, and I opened up with that clip. And the clip about, I'm paraphrasing Michael Jordan, where it was basically the scene was that he rubbed players the wrong way, which I think that's great. Leaders, I've seen many leaders, great leaders, fail because they're worried about, I hate to say it and sound harsh, but you're worried about feelings. And, you know, at the end of the day, if you're a leader, you have a job to do, and that's elevate those around you. And Michael Jordan, that's one of the greatest when he said, winning, you have to pay a price. There's a price to winning, and there's a price to leadership. It's one of the greatest, arguably one of the greatest players in any sport of all time. That's one of the greatest pieces I've ever seen. And I've already used it a handful of times. I get chills as I speak about it right now. I mean, that's they really well done documentary, but I hope people really listen with intent, because you can get so much from this interview. I mean, he's awesome.
Hey, Coach, one of the things that I've heard you talk about when it comes to looking for players, recruits, you said that competitiveness is the number one trait. And looking at that Michael Jordan documentary, does that kind of tie everything that you believe in when it comes to looking for excellent players?
It does, and we have criteria that's set, and the number one common denominator of every great athlete, every great coach, every great person in corporate America, every great military leader is the competitive spirit. It's called elite competitive spirit, you know, and unfortunately you look up the word competitor in the English, in the dictionary, and it says a person who takes part in an athletic event. I cannot disagree with that more. That's not a competitor, that's a participant, which is fine. And that's where people understand. That's the majority of people that walk the planet are participants. However, when you start talking about the Michael Jordans or the Ohio State Buckeyes, New England Patriots, Alabama Crimson Tide, you're not talking about ordinary. You're talking about elite.
Coach, when you look at those teams, and we'll get to football here in just a second, but I'm kind of fascinated by how the personnel changed on those teams, but the personality, I guess, stayed the same. I think that speaks to kind of their core values there. But how do you know, it's one thing to get to the mountaintop as you've done, but to stay there as that team did, as the teams that you were a part of did, what was the key to maintaining that level of success?
See, I don't know if I agree that I did a great job at that. I think I look at what we've done now that I've had time as we were builders. You know, we took 4 programs, and within the first year, immediate turnaround, and, you know, just getting a buy-in from the people. But as Lou Holtz used to say, it takes passion, energy, and focus to climb the mountain. Once you're at the top of the mountain, it's nothing but exhaustion. I mean, it's all arrows are pointed at you, and I think, you know, I think Coach Belichick is probably the best of all time at maintaining an elite program. I think Nick Saban, you know, I've told him that, and I just watch, you know, every year he's one of the best I've ever seen as far as not just building but maintaining a elite culture. To say that was one of my strengths, I think we did to a degree. You know, at Ohio State, I think we averaged 12 wins a year, but only won 1 national title. And so I don't know. I just think it's very difficult to maintain and keep that elite. Joe Madden, real quick, Joe Madden, when they won the World Series in 2016, he's a friend of mine. We're sitting in his office, and we're talking about how hard it is to repeat. And I could share 3 times, at least twice, we had the number 1 team in America coming back. And he said, everybody changes. It's so hard to repeat. As a matter of fact, when you go through all the sports, the major sports, the opportunity or the people that repeat, it's a minuscule number. Very few ever repeat because everybody, you know, it's just the way humans are. We change.
You know, Coach, in thinking about that, so then it speaks to somewhere along the line you have to deal with adversity. And so you talk about being a program builder. What have you learned about helping teams overcome adversity so they can get to the mountaintop?
Well, I've been talking about this lately, and there's a huge difference between motivation and inspiration. Motivation is something and this is just me speaking. There might be some disagreements out there. Motivation is a tool in the toolbox. It's something that's very powerful, yet non-sustainable. And the qualities of motivation are love, fear, and hate. And as a coach, for example, 4th down and 1 against a rival in overtime, I'm going to use them all. I'm looking for just a short burst, immediate ounce of energy that can get us through this. And I'm going to use everything. I'm going to get them to love me. I might get them to hate me. I might threaten their scholarship by the fear. Yet it's not. Those are all love or fear and hate are non-sustainable. However, motivation or inspiration is all about sustainability. It's transformational. And the two qualities of inspiration are love and ownership. And so you talk about how do you overcome adversity. And in my mind, there's only one way. You better own it and you better love each other, or you're going to fail. And all the other things, I just got done talking to a team. A team comes out in a new black helmet, and boy, they're excited about their new uniforms or their throwback uniforms, or the crowd gets behind them and they're playing off. That's a motivated team. That's non-sustainable. That's at some point that's going to fail. The inspired team, the team that owns it and they love each other, those are the ones you don't want to play because you're in for a 4-quarter battle.
Coach, you talk about inspirational. I get a chance to see a little bit of the special on Alex Smith and all that he's been working through and trying to overcome, and just a gruesome injury. Obviously, your time together, you know him well. You know what makes him tick. Just your thoughts on what he's been through and just your belief in him that he's going to come on the other side of this thing.
Yeah, I am almost embarrassed to say, as much as I love Alex and as close as we are, I didn't know the extent. And he's a private person. His wife is incredible. His mom and dad are very close with him. Actually, went back and forth with him after that. I had no idea. It came down to the doctor saying we're in life-saving mode, then leg-saving mode. I heard it was bad, and we texted. I called him, but he's a very private guy. But that's a testimony to, first, his mom and dad are educators, and they're a great family. But one of the key things that always stick out to me for the rest of my life with Alex is that last part of that show where they showed him running around with his family. And he talked to Elizabeth, his wife, and he said, we're blessed beyond, even as he's fighting for his life. So that's Alex Smith. He's one of the toughest human beings I've ever been around, most competitive human being I've ever been around. Him and Tebow and JT Barrett, those guys are up there. But he also got a heart of gold, and he's strong in his faith, and he has a sense of purpose. That's what Alex is all about.
Coach, you mentioned some great quarterbacks there, Alex and JT Barrett and Tim Tebow, and you talked about those traits, competitiveness and toughness. And I think sometimes when we look at quarterbacks, we don't place enough value on toughness. When you're evaluating quarterbacks, how can you determine if they have the right toughness, the right stuff inside to be the leader of the team and really a winner?
Well, that's I agree. How do so many people make mistakes, me included? And in the NFL, when you have all that time and resources, he gets enamored by how the guy throws the ball. Well, I got news. That's a lot of people throw the ball well. What throwing the ball well does not make Tom Brady Tom Brady. Drew Brees, the reason he's the way he is not because he throws the ball well. And the Rivers guy, he actually doesn't throw. It's an awkward throwing motion, but he's a tough guy, and he's a leader, and he's a competitor. So the older I got, we made very few mistakes on quarterbacks. And that's because we had set criteria that we would not take you if you didn't fit our criteria. And how do you evaluate toughness? I love the guy like Joe Burrow. I know he had all his success after he left us, but he was unrecruited. But we took him because of basketball. He was a maniac competitor, tough as nails, under-recruited, and we said, let's take him. JT Barrett is the most glorified, most accomplished quarterback in the Big Ten. Why? Yeah, he's a little undersized. He doesn't have the greatest of arm, but he's tough and he's competitor. And toughness is not that hard to identify if you really do your homework.
Coach, you talk about the toughness at that position is also just the time commitment and the energy it takes to be successful at that position. When you give a quarterback an assignment, you need to watch this tape, that tape, do this work, they do it. How do you go about figuring out what they're doing aside from the things they're asked to do with such a time-consuming position?
Yeah, it's rather obvious. There's an NCAA rule that says you can only spend 20 hours per week with your players. And every year I would remind them constantly, if you're spending 20 hours a week, especially at quarterback, you're going to be a very bad player at this level. You will not survive. I know the NCAA mandates you can only spend 20 hours, and that's with coaches. You need at least double that. That means film work on your own. Or I guess I just actually shared this with my daughter. A Kobe Bryant quote that if your habits don't reflect your dreams and goals, and then change your habits, that's too easy. I always say change your dreams and goals because you're never going to make it. I want to be an all Big Ten quarterback. I want to be a first-round draft pick. And I think just honest, transparent conversation with them saying you have no chance with the current habits you have. If you are worried about spending 20 hours a week at a major college being a quarterback, I can help you. You're probably very bad at your skill. You're not a good quarterback because you're not willing to spend that inordinate amount of time to be great at a very difficult position.
Coach, there's a lot of criticism that comes with quarterbacks, and one of your quarterbacks, Dwayne Haskins, is undergoing some criticism. What is it about Dwayne Haskins that you believe that will eventually let him get on the other side and be very successful at the next level?
I hate to be so simplistic on this, but you better surround him with some really good players. The NFL is amazing to me is that the minute a team, they draft a quarterback, they put him on a very bad team, or there are a lot of culture issues, which I don't want to start throwing stones because but I do know. I talk to my guys. I talk to a lot of these players, and so it's a quarterback's fault now that they had their coach got fired after week 3 or 4. They were in complete disarray, and it's a quarterback's fault now. I wish college was that easy. For some reason, it's not the quarterback's fault; it's the coach's fault. But to me, it's about culture and leadership. You want Dwayne to be a great player, surround him with some really good players. Surrounded with a really elite culture. Why does the New England Patriots, there's teams in the NFL that have far greater players than they have to because they draft every year ahead of them. So on paper, there's teams that have been drafted ahead of the New England Patriots for 15 years, yet they can't beat them. What, so they're bad players? No, there's something else there. It's called an elite culture, elite leadership. They don't have that. There's something wrong with the organization. And so Dwayne's going to be, you want Dwayne to be great? Put a lot of greatness around him. That's the one common denominator of all great quarterbacks. They have great players around them.
No doubt, Coach. One of the other positions, and we can go through a list of just about every position where Ohio State has been.
Let me interrupt you guys real fast.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me interrupt you. Why is that hard to figure out? Why is it? I'm just curious that you guys are obviously great at what you do. Why? So it's the quarterback's fault. Never mind the fact that their coach got fired, the place is a mess, there's this going on. A lot of stuff that I heard from behind the scenes, because once again, I have several players there, yet it's Dwayne's fault. Or, some other great quarterback that went on. Joe Burrow, he's at the Cincinnati Bengals now, and they were 2-14 last year. I'm a Bengals fan. Mm-hmm. I'm from there. But you want to know how Joe Burrow is going to become great? Surround him with a great culture, with great leadership, and some great players. He'll be great. If not, he won't.
Yeah, we've talked about, Coach, not just the culture, but when you kind of look at the young quarterbacks in the league and look at a guy like Jared Goff, who was kind of given up for dead. And then we've talked about the 3 Ps. So you have the culture aspect of it. That's one side of it. But then the 3 Ps with play callers, protection, playmakers. Like if you don't check all 3 of those boxes, especially with a young quarterback, man, you're not giving him a chance at all. And it's not a mystery when you see these guys take the leap. If you look at Lamar Jackson and what he's been able to accomplish, and look at Patrick Mahomes, look at the culture, but then look at the protection they have, the play callers they have, and the playmakers that they have. It's not a secret formula.
I love that. I agree with you 100%. And look at Alex Smith. Alex Smith, I was told, was a bust in the NFL because he was with a really bad team that was really struggling as an organization. I remember looking it up. They were like in the bottom 5 in defense, bottom 5 in offense. They were terrible turnovers, terrible everything. and Alex Smith's a bust. And then he goes with a guy like Andy Reid, and he excels. So I would love. I think you guys. I just now that I'm actually on television now, and I try to get that message across to so many people. Quit blaming the darn player. All of a sudden now he's a bad player. The guy threw 50 touchdown passes at Ohio State in a very competitive conference, and he can. Obviously he's a great player. It's what's around him.
Coach, in thinking about the NFL, we always build teams with quarterbacks and pass rushers, and you've been surrounded by some great pass rushers throughout your time. What are the core traits that you look for when you're evaluating the position?
Oh, pass rusher, we've had, going all the way back to John Simon, to Jalen Holmes, Sam Hubbard, Tyquan Lewis, Bosa, and then Chase Young. And first thing you always look for is just the gift. You got to run. You got to be tall, angular. Those are the ideal guys. I know there's been others, but that's what we look for. And then, as all other positions, is he a competitive freak? Because pass rushing on the body, that's one of the hardest things, most fatiguing things a human being can do. And you see a lot of great pass rushers get very average during the course of a drive because of fatigue. You see great pass rushers get very average during the course of a game because of fatigue. So we look for, obviously, the God gift skills. You want a guy that can turn power to speed and speed to power. That means if he's bull rushing and the guy sets on him, he can turn that to speed move right now. If the guy sits back on him, he can be speed mode and then all of a sudden be a bull rusher. So speed to power, power to speed, number one. Size, length, and then most importantly, a competitive animal. A guy, Nick Bosa, he is very gifted. But you want to know what makes Nick Bosa? You have to shoot him to stop him. He's a guy that will not stop. Of all the three, Joey, Nick, and Chase, I loved all three of them. And the other guys, Nick Bosa's, you have to really shoot that guy to stop him. That's what makes him great.
Coach, I remember being down there on the field before the Cotton Bowl against SC, and I don't know that I've seen a singular player dominate a football game. Even when the production wasn't there, there was so much disruption. There was so much attention going to him. It makes life easier for everybody else that's playing around you. When you look at the corners you've put out, Coach, we've talked about this a bunch on our podcast, but just kind of the main schools that have been producing corners. When you look at Ohio State, you look at LSU, you look at Alabama, and not only are you getting great coaches at those programs with you guys, but also we believe there's something to the fact that you're playing against NFL wide receivers every single day in practice, so these guys are more prepared when they get to the next level. I'd just love to get your philosophy on what you look for in corners and how much you believe that iron sharpens iron has helped those guys at those schools.
Well, the same qualities we talked about before. Number one is competitor toughness, leadership, intelligence, and adaptability. But with a corner, you're looking for a guy that can play man coverage. Let's not fool ourselves that I've never had an NFL scout or head coach come in and say, hey, we're looking for the best zone coverage corner we can find. And I remember Bob Stoops once told me this when he was at Kansas State. He said, this is well before a lot of people were playing man coverage. And I was an assistant coach, and I just talked to him. They were 99% man. And he said, we recruit to man. Kids want to play man. That's why we get these great corners. And the kids get off the bus playing man. They go to sleep playing man coverage. And that was I know we've changed a little bit because you have to, that hurt us at times a little bit near the end because we played so much man coverage, the crossing routes, etc. But at the end of the day, like I said, every corner we've had, I think, 6 or 7 first rounders. The reason why? Because they can play man coverage. And that, at the end of the day, can you go not one guy? Maybe that's a new, hey, I'm looking for a good cover 3 corner. Never heard that before in my life. I want to see, can a guy play man-to-man on a number 2 or number 1 receiver? That's every question. So we took that to heart, and we trained our guys every day to play man coverage.
Coach, I'm looking at my notes here, and I have competitiveness over and over, competitive animal, competitive freak, all of those things. But then it comes down to getting guys to play hard. What has been the one thing that's enabled you to motivate or inspire your teams to play harder than the other team? Because that's really the biggest determining factor in who wins games.
Back in, 2001, I got hired, actually December 2000, I got hired at Bowling Green. And I got hired from Notre Dame. At Notre Dame, I worked for Lou Holtz and Bob Davie. And I remember Lou Holtz was like an encyclopedia, and he would talk to me about the plan to win, and what's the culture look like, and a little bit of trial and error. But my dream was always to have a team that was fearless. I've heard coaches say that don't make mistakes. Well, I got news. You're going to make a bunch of mistakes during the course of a game. I got something better. How about this? Effort overcomes mistake 100% of the time. And if you don't believe that, then that's fine. I believe that. I believe at the end, in my 33 years of coaching, I've never been on a team that if they played harder than their opponent, they didn't win. I really believe that. And I did a good job of getting that across to our players. The hell with making a mistake, man. You're going to make a bunch of them. You want to know what overcomes a mistake? You're going like your hair's on fire. We used to call it 4 to 6 A to B. 4 to 6 seconds is length of the play. There's always a point A and a finish point B during a game. And wherever you start, just make sure between A and B, you're going a million miles an hour. So we believed effort overcome mistakes. I wanted fearlessness. I wanted, there was times where people would criticize us because we had penalties. And I would often tell the media, I don't, silly penalties, of course. But that doesn't mean you have lack of discipline because you have a penalty. That means football is a violent, hard game where you're playing very hard. You're playing so fast that you're fearless. You're going to have a penalty. I had no problem with that. And so it's just, this is just a culture that I've always believed in.
Coach, last question from me, and you've been so generous with your time. We do appreciate it. There's unprecedented obstacles right now for coaches and for programs at the college level and the NFL level. But with those obstacles, also there's some opportunities there. If you put your head coaching hat on at the NFL level or the college level, what opportunities do you see that exist right now in this unique time that we're living in?
Well, when adversity strikes, which we are in adversity, when you lose a Nick Bosa, we lost Nick Bosa 1 year. He didn't play the whole season, and we still went 13-1 and went to the Rose Bowl. When adversity strikes, that's when leadership and culture get exposed. And in corporate America, at the end of this virus, whenever this is, you're going to see companies that are bankrupt. You're going to see organizations that fall apart, and it's not because they have, they're selling default equipment or whatever. It's because they had a tough culture and tough leadership that didn't survive it. You're going to see college football. Some teams are going to blossom from this. Some teams will come out stronger than they've ever been. Other teams will fold. And it's not because of talent. It's because of culture and leader. What is your culture of your organization, and how strong is your leadership? And I got just something to add about that. If you can't tell me your culture, then you don't have one. And I challenge coaches all the time with that before I speak to the team or their staff, or even in corporate America. If I'm giving a speech, I'll say, well, tell me what your culture is. And I can tell if it's crickets or they start getting nervous. I often help them and say, you don't have one. Because if your employees if your players can't tell us what's expected, you have no culture. You can say it's important, but you don't have one.
Awesome. Coach, that's been fantastic, man. I can't thank you enough for your time. I know you're busy, but it's as always just so great to catch up with you. I hope you and your family are safe, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, so the second one, when I saw you guys coming up on the calendar, I was really excited. I think you guys are awesome. I love your stuff.